Hi.
Hello, Lodi. I'm going to take these off because they cause a glare. Welcome to the view from 202, and we are actually coming to you from 202. This is my lovely office. Blaze is here with us again this evening, and my guest is our Chief of Police, Wayne Smith, and we will get to Wayne shortly. Just a couple of community reminders. This Saturday is Susie the Duck Day. So it's time to celebrate being Lodians and the gift that keeps on giving, our very own Susie the Duck. While the day looks very different from past years, it is still a happening thing. And it's a great way to show your support for local businesses. So a reminder from our show 2 weeks ago, Christy McMorris, our chamber director, came and spoke about the festivities on Saturday. And a reminder that you can buy raffle tickets for Susie from at the Buttercream Bakery and out at the Main Street Piggly Wiggly, Main Street Market. The raffle prizes, the grand prize is $250 gift certificate to our very own Lodi Sausage Company. Yum. The first place is a truckload of groceries from the Main Street Piggly Wiggly, Main Street Market. Second prize, I can't remember. One of them is lots of gift certificates to PJ's Pizza. So show your love for the community. All the proceeds from the raffle tickets are going to direct grants to businesses to keep our small businesses healthy and hopefully thriving. So please come out and support our local businesses on Saturday. There will also be a chamber brat stand on Main Street. I believe the FFA group is going to have grilled cheese sandwiches and pulled pork sandwiches up in the Bushnell Ford parking lot. And the Kona ice truck is going to be at the Prairie Valley Resale Shop, I think in the afternoon sometime. All of that is on the Chamber's Facebook page. Also a reminder that we are under a mask mandate. Wayne and I, as Chief of Police and Mayor, we spend a fair amount of time together. And honestly, I just got a COVID test yesterday because I'm helping someone who is having some surgery tomorrow. I'm going to be on nurse duty over the weekend. So I went and got a COVID test at the Alliant Energy Center. It was an amazingly easy process. If you feel like you want to know or need to know if you've been exposed at all, or if you're experiencing any symptoms, you can go online, register. It's super easy. You get emailed a QR code. You go to the Alliant Energy Center. You get in a line. They move incredibly quickly. The test was not bad at all. I had one earlier in the year that was a brain swab. This was not quite as alarming. And lo and behold, in a meeting we were in this morning, I get a little alert on my phone or on my watch, and my test results were back and it was negative. So it was a very painless process and quick turnaround with the test results, which I was thrilled about. So if you and or any of your loved ones need a COVID test, the Alliant Energy Center is free. They have expanded hours several days a week till 8 p.m. Very easy way to do it. But we are under a mask mandate. Please wear your masks indoors. We'd love for you to support our businesses and our restaurants and everyone local, but be respectful. Here in our community, we care. We can show how we love where we live by wearing our masks. So mask up when you are outside. Wayne has one that he has all the time.
Mine is excellent.
His is excellent.
It's getting pretty moist from the day.
So
so far.
We're setting our masks aside for tonight, but please know that otherwise in City Hall, we do have them on. Okay, absentee voting. If you are interested in getting an absentee ballot, go to My Vote Wisconsin. It'll walk you through the whole process. If you want to volunteer as a poll worker, we are always looking for poll workers. Don't forget, there's the big election in November. If you want to volunteer, that would be fantastic. We'd love to have you helping out. And so you can request an absentee ballot. I think tomorrow might be the deadline for requesting those. So go online tonight. That is one way to also demonstrate how you love where you live, and that means the broader country. So vote, vote, vote. We want to see you get involved, get active. Also, the Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health, I don't know if you can see this, but they have this cool feelings thermometer as all of our families are feeling and our children are experiencing some pretty overwhelming emotions these days. This is a great thing to just hang on your refrigerator. The chief and I were discussing what our feelings are tonight. And I think if you'd asked me earlier in the day, it might have been a little different. Tonight, I'm pretty happy, calm, and content, which is down in the blue area, which is where I strive to spend most of my life. But of course, we all bounce all over, and having conversations about what we're feeling these days is so important. So if you get a chance, grab one of these off the Wisconsin Department of Health. It's children.wi.gov. children.wi.gov. You can download one of these, stick it on your fridge, check in with your loved ones regularly to see how everybody's faring. Reminder that on Friday morning again at 10:30 over at the elementary, sorry, it was a high school when I went there, at the elementary school parking lot, Reach Out Lodi is having food distribution again. I think it's posted to start at 10:30, but we have been starting as soon as we've got all the volunteers lined up and the stations ready to go. Our Reach Out folks and Second Harvest Food Bank have been doing an amazing job. I know last week, within 45 minutes, we'd served 250 families. So it is just come. You can pick up for multiple families. People are lining up around 9:15, 9:30 in the morning. And as I said, we get going as quickly as we have all the volunteers set up and the stations are good to go. So please, if you know of someone who is food insecure right now, or you or your family or neighbors need some food, come over to the elementary school parking lot Friday morning. And if you have time and or resources and want to donate your time or some funding, Reach Out Lodi is always looking for donations of food. They post on their Facebook page what they're looking for and what they're in need of. Or if you want to donate to or volunteer your time to perhaps drive someone, or we also do deliveries on Friday to people who can't get over to the food delivery place, distribution site. We're always looking for volunteers. So just give Reach Out Lodi a call, 608-592-4592. Okay, I think that's most of the stuff I had to go through. I'm sure I will think of things. Wayne knows how mysteriously my brain works. And we're kind of warm in here, and the chief is all you don't have your Kevlar on, do you?
No.
Okay. I asked him to leave his gun, but he knows how I am, so he's still worried. It is my great pleasure to have Wayne here with us. Wayne has been such a wonderful asset to our community. We dragged him down here a year ago, May, as our interim chief of police. Over the summer, we managed to lull him into some false sense of security in loving our community. So he did apply for the chief position, and we were lucky enough that he was selected and agreed to accept the job. So it has been a sea change in our community to have Wayne here. It's been a huge sea change for our police office or police department as well. So I just want to welcome Wayne. Good to have you here.
Thank
Yay.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being my
Happy to
guest.
be here and excited for this opportunity to just reach out and meet some more people and talk with the community. So
Excellent. So if you have questions, if you happen to be watching us live tonight, I think Blaze is monitoring the comments on the live stream. So if you want to shoot a question in, please feel free to do so. I asked Wayne to just start off telling us a little bit about himself. He is younger than I am, but not by that many years. So he did have a really interesting career path leading him to Lodi. So could you just walk us through kind of what got you into law enforcement? Where'd you grow up?
well,
Do you have any birthmarks? I'm kidding.
right,
Sorry.
Yeah, birthmarks and scars. No, so I was born in Pennsylvania, but my family had moved around primarily because of my father's job, and we landed in DeForest, where I went to high school. Went to the majority of school in DeForest, and after graduating from high school, I had initially planned to become a stockbroker. And
Really?
yeah, it was. I had
That's interesting.
an economics teacher that was, it interested me.
Yeah.
That teacher engaged me.
Nice.
So I interned, and I thought that was going to be my career path.
Yep.
I went on a ride along, and it felt right, and it was, it was really fun. And I thought, boy, I should do this instead of sitting in an office doing paperwork. So that's the biggest lie of my youth, is that all I do is paperwork now. So in law enforcement, but it's 15 seconds of fun and
Sure.
7 hours of paperwork. So, but no, it's been a good thing. And been in law enforcement for a little over 30 years now, the majority with Columbia County, where I had intended to retire. Got voluntold down here when Lodi needed somebody to run the department, and the initial plan was to be a Band-Aid and fix what you can, keep it running, and turn it over to whoever the city would have selected. And when I got down here, when I first started with Columbia County, I lived in Harmony Grove actually, and so I had some connection to Lodi. I knew the area, and I guess coming back down here full time as opposed to passing through in a county squad, brought some of that back, and it was a great community, and there was a lot of support. People were happy to see you, which is a nice thing. It's a very generous community, and to see people helping each other, and the opportunity to be involved with people. Other than just other law enforcement persons,
Sure.
and other than just when something bad happens, because that's usually whenever a law enforcement person's called, was different down here, and that's what kind of interested me. There were things to do at the police department that needed updated, needed changing, and kind of gave me a sense of purpose, and I guess reinvigorated my feelings about law enforcement, and it was sticking out, so I applied and was fortunate to get it. So now you're stuck with me.
That's a beautiful thing, because I've made him sign in blood that he ain't going anywhere until at least I retire again.
Right.
So one of the things I was fascinated about was some of the opportunities you had prior to getting here. What was kind of the most, so you were a detective for a while, correct?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, I worked in the jail in Key West, Florida. I worked for Monroe County Sheriff.
Really?
First. And that was an eye-opener. Had been down there on vacation, and much like I think people here in town would be surprised, when you visit, you live, you're not involved in taking calls for problems. You don't really know.
Looks pretty good.
Some of those, I mean, the Keys looked wonderful. I got down there, and it was, completely different than a vacation, and but still interesting, and I liked it. Had the opportunity to return and work undercover in Columbia County, and then transitioned to the road, and then had tried to become a detective and didn't get it the first time.
Oops, sorry, didn't bring that up.
Interestingly enough, sometimes you don't get what you want, but other good things happen because of that.
Absolutely.
It's a good lesson. I was young when that happened, and disappointed, of course, but other doors opened, other things happened, other things that really built my career happened. I did become a detective the next year, so it wasn't terrible, but went through that process. Then became a detective lieutenant at the sheriff's office, and then worked from there with patrol as a PM and midnight supervisor, and then back to days. And during the course of that, at different times, was on the emergency response team. At one time, commanded it, and also had an opportunity to be involved with the Columbia County Dive Rescue Team.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of things. I'm sure I'm missing something, but through the course of what I've learned in my career, it's been it's not just been me, but it's been a lot of people along the way, and a lot of coworkers, and I've learned from a lot of people, and been really fortunate.
Great, good. And I was surprised to hear that you were somehow involved with the Dahmer murder investigation. Was that Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah. So Jeffrey Dahmer was murdered at the state prison outside Portage, and because I didn't get the detective job the first try, all of the detectives were busy in court on a case, and Dahmer was murdered, and there was staffing issue and not enough people to go, and I guess because I finished second, they called me and said, "Hey, put on some regular clothes and go to the prison." So had I got what I wanted, I wouldn't have experienced that initial day. And,
wow.
That was pretty interesting, just from the standpoint of prison's a secure setting. Something like that shouldn't be able to happen in a prison without somebody knowing what happened or seeing it or being involved. And it was a little bit of mystery at first, but we worked through that and worked with the state on that and a lot of people, and it was really a good experience for me, or really honed my interest in homicide investigation,
Oh,
and
excellent. Yeah.
caused me, when I went to some homicide training that state puts on, was a founding member of the Wisconsin Association of Homicide Investigators, and that's a training or an educational group that provides a yearly conference with training for other homicide investigators and first line officers, so that
That's great.
we're better at those things, because homicide is probably the most important thing we can work. Obviously someone that's been murdered, they're not able to speak for themselves about what happened, and a family has a right to those answers. So I take that really personal, and it's, if not the most important, one of the most important things we do is to put an answer to things like that for people, so that they can process, move on, and justice can be served.
Oh, that's cool. Well, you've had a great number of experiences that led you to our doorstep, which is a beautiful thing. So here you get to run your own shop.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It's good. I've had a lot of leaders in my past to learn from, and like I tell a brand new officer, when you work with other officers, learn from them. Take the things that work for you. Everybody has a different style, and everybody has a different focus, and not everything that works for one person works for others. As long as we get from point A to point B reasonably efficiently, it's good. So I've been able to take things from a lot of leaders in my past, and use those and help those to perhaps mold how I've done things. Been fortunate.
Excellent. So what is the guiding philosophy of the police department here in Lodi?
Well, my primary experience has been as a county officer, and not that the county's wrong or a bad place. I loved it there. But Columbia County, for instance, is 785 square miles, and on any given time, there's 4 or 5 people. Not a lot of time to spend with people or solving non-criminal problems. Didn't know how much I would like it till I was down here, but we have an opportunity every day to make a change in people's lives, which is what we all get into law enforcement in the first place, to help people and make their life a better place. To get to do that now, working here every day, and it might be completely unrelated to law enforcement, but people walk in the door and ask for help about some problem. And instead of being in a rush to get to the next call that's maybe 20 miles away, we're able to slow down and help resolve some of those issues. And that's probably really where I've tried to build on that. I want our department to be able to make a difference in people's lives. First and foremost, safety and security, obviously, and their free movement in society. But we really want to be a community partner and be a place where when you need those things, we can hopefully help you. We look to serve the community, be a part of it. We want to be proactive, fair but firm at times when needed. And I think so. Primarily, that's our goal. It's customer service. I think education before enforcement is important, and as we've talked in the past, we spend the majority of our funds on public safety for 3% of the population, basically. So 97% of the population is not in need of enforcement, I guess, but at times, slip and need some education, and try to make sure that we respond to persons in need. And we have to remember from time to time, after years and years of law enforcement, you get, I guess, conditioned, cynical, or jaded. Traffic stops are things we fill time with when we're not responding to emergency calls. But for the majority of the population, the only time they encounter a law enforcement officer is a traffic stop. And for them, it's one of the worst experiences of their life, potentially, right?
Yes.
And we forget to look at it that way because it's so routine, so regular for us. Now, I don't want to suggest that we go up routine every day, because traffic stops are extremely dangerous. But once we get up there and find out that it's not dangerous, then it's very routine, and often it's easy for an officer to forget that this is a bad or troubling experience for those folks. So with that in mind, I want to give service that if it was you or your family member in whatever the situation or whatever the crisis might be, make sure we treat them like we would want to be treated.
That's wonderful. That's good to hear. So you've hired a few people. Can you tell us a little bit about the folks you're working with?
Well, we've been really lucky. Right when I first got here, a hiring process had already begun, and a young gentleman, Kyle McCarty, had been selected as the finalist, and so met with him and hired him. I was still working for the county at that time, so it was odd. He's hired to wear blue at a place by a guy wearing brown, right? So, but we worked through that, and he's been a great hire and is a nice young man. We've also hired a lieutenant, fortunately, here in April, and that's William Nichols, and I feel really fortunate to have him. He's a great fit to the team. He balances me. He sometimes will say, or we could do this, which is helpful. So he's been a great asset. He's a hard worker.
Yeah.
He's salaried, so I let him work as much overtime as he wants. And,
Have at it.
Right.
Yeah, as the mayor, I approve of that too.
But we're really fortunate to have him. We stole him away from a job.
Excellent.
And he is working out great and doing a really fantastic job, and has really helped take some of the load from me as far as managing the department, because there's still a lot of things to update, a lot of things to fix. We're working through a lot of those critical stuff we've got a handle on, and now what we're trying to build is really the best department, not only just in this county but in the state. My goal is to have people want to come and work here as opposed to come here and train and leave.
Yeah.
And we offer good leadership, competitive pay, quality equipment, and excellent training. And the only thing we can't provide those young guys is crazy criminal excitement on a daily basis. Everything.
This does not mean we want crazy criminal.
No, it sure not. No, it sure doesn't.
Do not infer that.
Yeah, and that's definitely not what I'm saying. Everything that happens in Milwaukee happens in Lodi. Just the frequency is a lot less, and that's a good thing. When you're young and brand new in law enforcement, you want to be involved in everything. You want your hair on fire. So we can't offer that, but we can offer a great environment with all those other things, and I think that makes it attractive. I think the work environment is pleasant and happy, and I like to have them work hard and have a good time when they're doing it. So that's kind of what we're doing there.
That is a beautiful thing. My philosophy too, life is too short. So if I call the police department, who answers the phone if it's during normal business, the non-emergency?
Sure, could be anybody.
So theoretically, who would it be?
Typically, our administrative assistant, Melissa Randall O'Neill, would be answering your call. She's there during business hours, Monday through Friday. She's there often longer hours as well. If she doesn't answer, you might get Bill or myself or any one of the other officers in there. And if it's an emergency, we ask that you don't call directly for us. You can call the police department, not emergency line, of course, but we want you to dial 1 because you'll get a dispatcher who will send an officer right away. So if you have a call and you need to see an officer, we prefer you do it that way. Obviously, if it's an emergency, we want you to dial 911 because that's the quickest way to get an officer coming. If the phones are tied up or you call the other way and leave a message, I don't know when that'll necessarily be found, and then people might be upset or we don't come when we could be there right away because there's an officer just down the street perhaps.
So it's been a challenging few months for law enforcement around the country. I'm just wondering what it felt like to watch what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd as someone wearing a badge, to see what played out up there and kind of how you as a department have processed what you saw and the fallout from that, and any lessons learned or how that's impacting your work. Does that make sense?
It does. It's difficult. I, like you, know the same amount of information. We're not involved, and I see what's presented to us, and you have to make your best judgments based on that. It certainly makes me uncomfortable to see what had occurred there, and how long that went on. I can only guess or speculate that there's a training or leadership issue that's much deeper than just what we saw on TV. You see if you've seen enough of it, you see some resistive behavior, regardless of whether it's because of claustrophobia or what, but nonetheless resistive behavior. So we don't have the opportunity in law enforcement to just stop what we're doing and walk away from things. You have to solve a problem, you have to resolve it. So we have different ways of controlling things and different methods. And I don't know what their training is or what their methods are. It's certainly what I saw on TV, not something that we do here, and not something that we would be comfortable with. So it's difficult to speak to that. I think greater than that issue that's been hard for law enforcement is there's been a perception, or at least a narrative, that that's all of us. Every law enforcement person is like that. And I know that's not the case, because I work with, I know hundreds of law enforcement professionals in the state. And in Wisconsin, I think we're very fortunate to have high training requirements, high training standards. And I would opine that Wisconsin law enforcement officers are some of the best trained officers in this country.
Well, that's good to know.
And it's difficult to see the things that are happening, to see cities burn, to see that type of chaos go relatively unchallenged. Law enforcement is geared towards putting a stop to chaos, and it's certainly been chaotic, and to watch that is uncomfortable. I feel for people on State Street that were shut down due to COVID, and we're close, or hopefully soon, to opening businesses and getting someone back to normal again, and then have now their businesses closed because windows are broken, that sort of thing. And any message of peace or change or concern is really lost when people are being injured, property is damaged, and fires are started. And so it's unfortunate, because I think it gets it off track. And again, when those things happen, law enforcement is really the only answer to those problems, which when you're under attack and then you have to answer those problems, it's really difficult. It puts people it puts everyone in a really bad spot.
So I know we had a couple people in the community reach out about our department's use of force policy. But let's take a little step back from use of force. So how do police policies get developed, and what are some tools that you use?
Well, so policies develop differently across the board by many places. When I got down here last year, one of the first things I did was look at what are low-days policies. And frankly, a lot of them were really outdated. So that was one of the issues I had identified as needing an immediate fix. What we use is a program called Lexipol. It's a purchase for use web-based program. And what I like about that program, or that company, is that service is that they provide specific to each state, essentially a boilerplate. These are time-tested, expert-reviewed policies that are then customizable to your situation. And in addition to just a list of policy, because there's policy and procedures, and people often get them mixed up. There's how we do things, and then there's the rules of how we do things, and that's the difference. And Lexipol provides, I think, roughly 160 policy topics in there, and those have to all be gone through and make sure that they work for how we do it. There are policies about things that low-day doesn't have or doesn't do. So you have to go through and make sure either, we do that and that's fine, or no, you have to take that out. Because, we don't have a dive team, for example, on low-day. We don't have a university. Because there are different statutory requirements if you support, or you're like a university police department versus a regular municipality police department. So some of those things get removed. But what Lexipol does that's really fantastic is once it's all set and in place, They continually monitor any statutory changes
Mm-hmm.
or any case law changes, and then they push out an update to you that
Nice.
you can review and adjust. And it is as instant as I read it and accept it. As it goes into the system, the policy updates, our
Mhm.
officers can read, well, whenever one changes or one gets pushed out, they all get a notice that they have to read it and acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any changes made or whatever, the same thing happens, notice goes out, but it's instant, it's web-based, so it happens immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And they can watch it on their phone. They can log into it at home. They can log into it at work.
Nice.
They can read policy until they fall asleep if they'd like. So it's available to them everywhere.
Chief does that often. I'm kidding.
Right. And along with that, they also offer what they call daily training bulletins, which are daily is a little bit much, but like a weekly training or option where they get pushed out a particular policy for that week.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll be a scenario that says, so you've reviewed the policy and there's a scenario, this happens, and then just ask a couple of questions. So it's a policy refresher. It keeps them fresh and updated on the policy,
Mhm.
and they demonstrate that they understand it and that they're able to make an action based on policy.
Great.
And the thing with policy still is a guideline
Mm-hmm.
that we work within, but there's always a need for flexibility based on the situation, because you can't
Sure.
write something on paper for every situation. So
Absolutely. So Chief was kind enough when all of this was going down to share Lexipol with me and get me my account. So every time he updates a policy, I get a notification, and it's telling me that I'm woefully behind on reviewing all of my policies.
I get those too, but they're meaning to send you a letter about that. But.
Yeah, thank you very little. In specific, one of the things in particular people were concerned about is the use of force policy. The carotid hold or the carotid
Right.
choke hold is one in particular. So do you want to talk a little bit about our use
Sure.
of force?
Yeah. So our use of force policy is, I brought it here in front of us, and it is several pages long.
Mhm.
It details what is use of force, when can you use force, what's deadly force, when is it appropriate,
Mhm.
and then there are specific techniques that we can use. The carotid chokehold is a legitimate technique that's been trained. However, none of our officers are trained in that use, and it's just we've removed it from our policy, so we don't allow that. That's not to say that in a life or death
Mhm.
fight that something like that may happen,
Mhm.
and but it's not trained, it's not in policy. But if you're saving a life and it rises to that level, obviously what we saw in Minnesota was not a deadly force situation.
Mhm.
However, there's a deadly force situation. You could do something like that to save your life, essentially,
Sure.
even though it's not in our policy and it's not allowed.
Mhm.
For instance, we don't have a policy that says you can run people over with a car, right? We don't need to have a policy that says that.
I hope
Everybody,
not.
we all know
Yeah.
we can't do that. But if someone is shooting you and you're in a car and you can't get out of the car, and that's the only way you can save your life,
Mhm.
you can hit them with your car.
Mhm.
So we don't have a policy that says you can't do that, because you can't do that.
Mhm.
But in these rare circumstances,
Sure.
it may be appropriate. So so policy has to have built-in flexibility to understand, okay, that's outside of policy, but it was appropriate because it was saving a life.
Sure. Sure.
None of those things are things we want to have happen or want to do,
Mhm.
which is why we train policy, which is also why we train subject control and firearms and all those other things that we do, so
Mhm.
that we hopefully bring the next level of force from what's being used in order to
Mhm.
control a situation. So
Mhm.
our goal is to stop
Mhm.
whatever's happening and control the situation and then sort it out.
Mhm.
And so obviously if somebody's shooting someone, we can't use a lesser level of force than that
Right.
to stop that. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where policy tells us those answers, and then our training teaches us how to solve those situations. So we don't train to run people over per se, but I use that as an example because it's outlandish, but
It could,
but it could be something that has to happen.
sure.
So same thing with a chokehold. We don't train it. We don't teach it. We don't allow it.
Mhm.
But could you find a rare situation where that may
It
happen? It could.
Yeah. So, training, there's been a lot of conversation about as the country, state, et cetera, has cut back on mental health resources or has in the past, it never seems to be enough social workers to go around, et cetera. There's been a conversation about the police having to be all of those things. How about things like de-escalating a situation? What kind of training would an officer go through if you get to a scene and it's obvious someone is having a mental health crisis? What kind of training do officers go through?
We have annual training requirements as far as required hours to maintain your certification.
Mhm.
We partner with Columbia County, as do with all the other municipalities, and hold some training to meet that requirement. Typically, with that, they bring in mental health providers in the past, as well as social workers, and they teach us some techniques and some tools, things to use. Simply slowing down your speech,
Mhm.
maintaining some distance.
Mhm.
They teach us some techniques to use with someone that's having a mental health issue to hopefully de-escalate it.
Mhm.
There's also, outside training, there's conferences and that we send officers to
Right.
as available and when those things come up. So
Mhm.
we're always seeking out that type of training. It happens, every year. We've got annual requirements. And like I said, I really believe Wisconsin officers are trained to a much higher level than the rest of the nation.
That's great.
We might not be trained the highest, but I would be willing to bet it's very close.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I just don't have any statistics on it, but you talk to officers from other areas, and we get a lot more training than they do.
That's wonderful. That's good to hear. So, in our little community, a lot of things can be invisible. So when you say stuff that happens in Milwaukee happens
Sure.
here just with less frequency, um, what if you could kind of wave a magic wand to do a couple things for this community that perhaps could alleviate some of what you see? What would those sorts of things be? Does that make any sense?
I think so. Lock your homes,
Mm-hmm.
shut your garage doors, lock your cars. Take the valuables out of your cars, things that can be seen so they don't break into your car. Lock your car, because if you leave your car unlocked, they'll go in your car. And if you got a garage door opener, they're coming in your house. So lock your house when you go to sleep. We routinely post a 9 p.m. routine
Mm-hmm.
as a reminder for people to just check your house before you go to sleep. Lock your doors, make sure your house is secure, your car is secure.
Mm-hmm.
Just your own personal safety. I mean, I would love to say we live in a community where we don't have to lock your doors. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
For the most part, a criminal is an opportunist
Mm-hmm.
and probably lazy. And if you have a simple lock on things, they usually will move on to an easier target because they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
We routinely have vehicles going through. We've had home hunters. We had a stolen car just this spring down by Elm Street,
Mm-hmm.
and the keys were in it, and it was unlocked in an open garage. And you don't have to look back very far, just the last year where that went on for a while, not just in this community, but everywhere around Madison for about 20 miles in any direction.
Yeah.
And so those would be big things that every one of us could do and make it real easy. The other thing I would ask is, your neighborhood better than I do. When your neighbors are gone on vacation, and if you see something suspicious, call.
Mm-hmm.
We often hear about something the next day because people say, well, we didn't want to bother you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to get, we're here to be bothered. That's what we're here for. We want you to call and say, hey, look, I live on this street and I see something that doesn't look right.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll come check it out. And maybe
That's
it's
right.
nothing, and that costs us nothing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You may have prevented a burglar, and may have chased them off. I had an officer, Officer Hartman, the other night did a great job, and saw a vehicle traveling slow around 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Over on the north side of town, and they were making some odd turns once they realized he was onto them or following them.
Mhm.
And they then left the city, and it wasn't a vehicle from here, but that's the time of morning that we've had
Yeah.
people trying to go through homes, go through
Mhm.
cars, and did he prevent that?
Mhm.
I think he did. We'll
Mhm.
never really know, but somebody might have been coming to work and saw the same thing.
Sure.
Call us. We'll send a car. We'll check it out. So those are two really easy things. If I can get people to call when they're worried about bothering us,
Mhm.
we pay people to be here at night, so
That's true.
call and give them something to do. All right, it's not a bother. We want those calls, but we want you to call our number, dial 1, get a dispatcher, and ask for an officer.
Okay, so dial the non-emergency number
You
for
can,
Lloyd.
well, if it's an emergency, dial 911.
Okay,
If it's, I just think I see something weird, you can
Mhm.
call the local number, the
Mhm.
non-emergency, dial 1, you get the dispatcher and say, hey, I saw this strange thing, I need to talk to an officer.
Okay.
And they'll send one. Because
Okay.
sometimes I'll get in the morning and there'll be a message on there.
Mhm.
If the officer doesn't stop back to the office, after
Sure.
midnight,
Uh-huh.
nobody answers that message until morning.
Oh,
And
Sure.
the incident or whatever it was is
Mhm.
long been over
Sure.
at that point. So we've got people out there at night, just like we do during the day, to respond to these issues. And
Mhm.
I'd rather criminals learn that we're very active here and that law enforcement is going to follow you around if you're
Mhm.
looking for a car to steal,
Mhm.
and then they choose another place to go.
Mhm. Good advice. So lock your doors.
Lock
see
your
some-
homes.
Lock your homes. Lock everything.
Yeah, lock your homes, lock your cars. Don't have valuables out in the open.
Mhm.
And if you see something, say something.
Beautiful. So what are the biggest challenges facing the Lodi Police Department?
Well, biggest challenges are retention
Mhm.
and updating, outdated equipment and getting Lodi, to the point where they should be, in 2020.
Mhm.
Everybody has a strained budget. Budget is always a terrible word, and it's always difficult. So the biggest challenges are being able to do the things we want to do to accomplish these goals and provide the best service we
Mhm.
can while maintaining employees. It's expensive to hire an employee. It's expensive to train them, and that makes it even worse if you lose them.
Yeah.
So we want to do all those things, and we've got to do it within a smaller budget,
Mhm.
and we have to find creative ways to get these things done and provide
Sure.
those things. And one of those things is, for instance, I, as a member of WAHI, the homicide investigators, had an opportunity to go to a training in Virginia, and while down there, not only met trainers to bring back to Wisconsin, but and for WAHI,
Mhm.
but found a trainer out of Florida who's going to come and train in interview and interrogation and getting correct interviews and how not to get a false confession.
Mhm.
This August, we're going to have that. So
Excellent.
the trainer out of Florida is going to come and do that. And
Mhm.
so I'm excited about that. And, that's one of those alternative ways to get some really good, national,
Attention.
national accredited training.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That would be difficult for us to send officers to Florida,
Mhm.
but for less than what it would cost to send one, if I can finagle this
Mhm.
person to come here, we
That's
can
great.
train everybody for here for a fraction of that. And so it's doing things like that.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's a challenge or an opportunity. I guess I look at it as an opportunity. I enjoy those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Challenge or the opportunity is really what brought me here, I would
That's
guess.
great.
So
You have a new squad somewhere.
hopefully. We were supposed to have a new squad in April, but COVID changed those plans as far as that being built and arriving here.
Mhm.
We're hopeful it gets here. It's still in August yet. I know it's built, or I've been
Mhm.
told it's built.
Mhm.
I just don't know when it'll arrive here. So
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll see it on the streets soon.
I hope so. Yeah.
So a couple follow-up things. The use of force policy, Blaze is going to post on the Lodi Valley Chronicle website. So you can review that. Were you posting something else? Were we posting something else?
Well, we can post certainly if you'd like our goals and objectives, which is just
That'd be
a
beautiful.
summary statement. It's not
Mhm.
in great depth. We have a mission statement also for the department that can be
Beautiful.
posted if you have interest. Of course, we have a law enforcement code of ethics that we follow.
Excellent.
And there's a letter from the chief that goes at the beginning of our
Oh,
policy
I like
manual.
that.
So yeah, it's full of fluff. So
I have to say, Wayne is an incredibly good writer, and he's written a number of things for the Lodi Valley Chronicle website. And I have been, I was raised by an English teacher and have a doctorate and have advised students with their dissertations. And you are a very good writer. So what the chief writes is
Microsoft Word creates a lot of things for me. So
that's everyone's secret.
right.
One other thing Wayne and I talked briefly about was we've had another kind of warning for everybody, scamming.
Yeah.
Are these mostly
it-
electronic kind of?
You know, it's there's a variety of both. We have people receiving letters from Publishers Clearinghouse that they won things, and though if you receive a check where you're asked to deposit and then return some of it to pay the taxes on your winnings,
Don't do that.
that's not real. That's a scam. If you're asked for security or your account's been compromised, so we need to take your money out of your bank account and put it somewhere else safe, that's not real. That's not happening.
Mhm.
And so there's those scams. It comes by mail, it comes by phone, it comes by email, and these people are convincing. They'll give you, a lengthy story if you listen,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually, put some fear into people that hey, you're going to lose all your savings, but if you transfer it to this account, we can keep it safe while we work on your computer or we fix something.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad news is that money is usually gone. And it's gone before we usually get called. A lot of times they ask for a person to buy like eBay cards or Amazon cards or different types of cards, green cards.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they're like, don't call anybody, stay on the line with me, scratch numbers off, give them the numbers. Well, they're keeping you busy so you can't ask a family member or somebody else, hey, this sounds odd, right?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you give them those numbers off the card, someone else is emptying that money and moving.
Yeah.
And then by the time you realize, hey, this doesn't sound right, or the money never shows up, or whatever was going to happen doesn't happen, and you call the police, we can't track that.
Mm-hmm.
We can't recover your money.
Mm-hmm.
And the ideas and the things that people do, it's amazing. They come up with new ideas and all the time. And there's fake COVID tests now, and we've got a cure for COVID. And the real bottom line is, if you didn't call this place because you know who it is, don't trust it. If somebody calls and says you're your bank, call them back. Don't call them back at the number they gave you.
Mm-hmm.
Call your bank back at your own number and say, hey, is this person legitimate? Is this a real thing?
So be skeptical.
Yeah, and when your bank says, I don't think this is right, trust the bank.
Mm-hmm.
We've got very good banks here in town, and they frequently call us and say, hey, we've got this person here, we think this is a scam.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Sometimes we hear later that, a bank has told, the victim will tell us this, the bank told me they didn't think this was right, but I had them do it anyway. So, if your bank's telling you, hey, be careful with your money, think twice. Call us. Again, that's that call us. It's not bothering us. It's easy for us to take a look at something. And we'd much rather come down and say, yeah, that doesn't look legitimate, or we've actually seen that before and it's not, than for you to call us, a few days later and say, I've lost several $1,000s or I've lost my entire life savings. So be skeptical, trust nothing, which I know sounds terrible. But if you didn't call that business or you didn't call for that service, you have to consider, why are they calling you? And don't trust it. Unless
you think this doesn't happen to everyone. I had been mayor 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and everybody in the city got emails allegedly from me asking them to go buy gift cards. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. We got that at PD, and immediately I knew that wasn't a real thing.
It was very folksy and charming, like, hey, could you do me a favor? Signed Anne or something.
And when it's a secret.
Yes,
it's a secret. Don't tell anyone. I need you to go get something for it.
So there was, and one of my colleagues actually wound up in my office door, and I'm like, may I help you? He was like, yeah, did you want me to do something? And I'm like, oh my God, the email. So this happens. Someone had made up an email address, signed it, that was Ann Groves Lloyd, mayor of Lodi, and was emailing all of my colleagues telling them to go buy these gift cards on my behalf. So this happens everywhere. Be skeptical. Don't click on stuff you don't know from the sender. Reach out to our police department. I got to tell you, I'm incredibly proud to have Wayne here and his colleagues. Our police department is compassionate and deeply committed to our community, which is wonderful. When I grew up here, the police officers were very gentle and understanding with us, even though we won't get into my wayward youth, but they were just really understanding. And I think everyone who has kids in this community, I've heard a lot of feedback that you guys are doing a great job, that people feel like it's very compassionate the way you're approaching things. And I appreciate that, and I'm really proud to have you here.
That's great.
And Wayne has the best tchotchkes. So this is the Susie the duck in her
police uniform.
fancy little police uniform. She even has a radio and a little gun. She's loaded for bear. So kids, if you want one of these, accost one of our officers on the street, as well as a Lodi Police Department squeezy football for those stressful moments when you just need to squeeze someone and pretend it's their head. So we will have some follow-up materials on the website. If you have suggestions of guests for this wonderful podcast, or you want to hear or live stream it, or you want to hear from somebody else in the police department or anybody else in our community, let me know. Blaze also has up the link to the survey, so you can let us know if you want to volunteer for anything. Our community is as good as the effort we all put into it. So I hope you'll take time to reach out to me, to Wayne, to the police department, and keep coming back for our live stream. The next one will be in 2 weeks, which will be the 19th, I believe. And look on the LodiValleyChronicle.com website for information about who the guest will be. Don't forget, Saturday, Susie. Come out and support Susie Day. Support our local businesses. Mask up, everybody. We want to see your eyes, not the rest of your face, when you are inside buildings. So take care of one another. Be safe, be careful, and thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you, Lodi. Be well.